injuries are. How do you recognize them? How quickly can these happen? Today, especially when it was raining, you can get hypothermia if you're not appropriately dressed. So you don't have to be in Alaska or Montana to get hypothermia. And so to recognize hypothermia, some of the things that you can recognize, so signs and symptoms are, is the person you're interacting with have the umbles? And what I mean by umbles is, are they mumbling, stumbling, grumbling, and fumbling? So are they losing coordination? That's starting to tell you they're getting really, really close to having an altered mental status, which is an immediate ambulance call. Because at that point their core body temperature has started to drop, and the reasons why they're getting the fumblings is their arms and legs are no longer functioning like they should, just because they are cold. So when you start seeing those kind of symptoms, you're getting into hypothermia. At that point, it doesn't even have to be freezing. And so then you want to do passive warming. So blankets, getting them out of the cold, if they're wet and cold, getting them out of the wet, getting them dried off, getting them warmed into a blanket. And if they've got enough of an altered mental status, they will not be able to do that for themselves. You will physically have to do it yourself. And that's why you have trauma shears in your bag, because you need to cut those clothes off really quick and get them into that blanket so that they can start warming. Also, one of the amazing things our body does is when you eat food, I'm going to suggest high-calorie food, it actually warms your body because of the interaction with digestion. And so, especially like when you're out on trails and stuff and you start noticing somebody's struggling, feed them an energy bar. That helps to get their energy up so that their body heats itself naturally. There goes fun. Yeah. Well, no, that's not an ambulance, but...
There's a wreck on Stones River Road.
Okay. So the ambulance have come somewhere else. So when I say warming, I'm going to say not hotting. So don't get hot things. You want warm things that will help the body warm, but you don't want to do rapid warming. Leave that for the hospital. They have specialized equipment that they used for rapid heating.
So you don't want them sitting right next to the fire.
Yeah, don't sit them right next, because they're not going to be able to feel it the way we do because of the body temperature being what it is. So yeah, you don't want to get them near heaters or anything like that.
In hypothermia, the surface vessels shut down
Right.
and shunt all the fluid into the inside,
Yeah.
which means that they're going to be urinating a bunch.
They'll be
so they're going to
urinating
be dehydrated fairly shortly.
for warm water, not hot water, warm water.
Yes.
And those fluids are not going to really warm the body. You don't want to feed them cold because you don't want to lower the temperature, but it's not going to be enough to warm it. So you will notice by the time they get to this severe of cold injury, their hands are not going to be pink or whatever their normal color is. It's going to be this whitish gray, and it's going to be kind of mottled, because your body shuts everything down, and it always protects your core, because that's what it takes for you to stay alive. And so your feet, your legs, your hands, your arms, number one, they're going to be very cold, but you're not going to see normal color in them. It's going to be this grayish color.
What about the head?
Well, it gets cold too. That's why you wear a hat, huh? Yes. Because you lose a lot of heat out of your head. And so hats are a great way to capture that heat and get it back into the body.
If you get cold, put your hat on.
Yeah,
Yes.
get your hat on.
They say something like 75% of the heat will radiate from the head.
Yeah, it's a huge percentage. Yeah.
Well, I didn't wear a hat today.
Not today.
If
Well,
your
I'm
feet
sure-
are cold, you wear a hat.
Yeah, I'm sure if your mommy thought you were going to get cold, she would have put a hat on you. So mental status is a big indicator on how severe the hyperthermia is. If you notice them saying wrong words, again, we go back to the umbles. If they're stumbling, if they're losing their fine motor skills, that's another really key thing. Call the ambulance, get them on the way.
How do we know somebody altered aside from the mumbling?
Well, they're not gonna make sense. They won't know what day it is. With more severe things. What were you thinking of?
Oh yeah, who are you? Where are you? What are you doing?
Who, what, where, when?
So are they where they're at, what they're doing? And if they're not, that's one of those clues that the brain is not working as well, and that's a danger sign. That's a time to take action.
Interesting thing is that occurs both with hypo and hyperthermia.
Yes. They're very similar. Burns and frostbites are very similar. Especially with frostbite, and just like burns, you're going to get blisters. You're going to lose a lot of fluid. And so that's why hydration is very important. And I learned this when I went to training through Montana State. They had the head of the frostbite, basically, of Colorado University Hospital come up and do a presentation for us. This was a statewide training. She showed pictures of people who had been skiing. They're up in the mountains. They're not where services are readily available. They get disoriented. They get off the normal trail. They have to find different ways of getting down out of the mountain. And so they have frostbite on their feet and their hands. And these are skiers. They usually wear heavy, gloves and socks and everything, but they still get frostbite. They now have figured out treatments using thrombolytics, which open up and get the vessels flowing with blood again, and rapid heating, to where they have knocked down the percentage of amputations from frostbite from 46% down to 10%, just by learning how to deal with frostbite. Now that's above anything we will do, because this has to happen in a hospital situation. One of the things, though, that we can be aware of is if we find somebody with frostbite. So a frostbite, it's really a gray skin. It doesn't function. Don't try to move it. Let it be. Don't let them walk, because that will abrade the skin and cause more damage. So you're going to have to get them down the hill or to help without having them walk. Same thing with the hands. Do, their coat up for them, do everything. Don't make them do anything with their hands.
Would it be helpful to use splints?
Splints would be very helpful because it keeps pressure off of whatever is injured. Even a blanket, if you have somebody on a stretcher or laying down, tent your blanket, because even just the rubbing of that blanket on an injured body part is enough to abrade it and damage it. So they have things in the hospital where they're able to take care of it, but it can't be injured in the field. Also, if it's frozen, don't unthaw the frozen body part unless you know you can keep it from freezing again. Because once you freeze it the second time, they're not able to do much of anything with it other than amputation.
The other part of that is if you thaw it out in the field, you're going to be putting out a lot of potassium into the body.
Yes.
And that can stop a heart.
Mm-hmm.
So you can deal with that in the hospital.
Yes.
But out in the field, you'll kill them.
Yeah.
The short answer is don't try to treat it, get it to somebody who can.
Yeah.
Time is tissue.
Yes, time is tissue, and that's true for a lot of different things that go on. Time is tissue, and you want to preserve tissue at all costs. So another thing, when I was at EMT there in Montana, we had a guy who moved up here from California, and he moved up on Henry Creek. Henry Creek was known for being a very bad road. It was good basically in the summertime. Spring, winter, and fall, it was not a pretty thing to get in and out of there. He bought a house up Henry Creek and decided he was going to come into town, and it was 0 that day. He left his house in a 2-wheel drive car, doesn't know how to drive on snow, He had a coat and, you know, he was okay dressed for the weather. But when he left his car, because it went in the ditch, because Henry Creek is not a nice road, he lost one of his gloves. And he continued walking down the hill. When we got called for the ambulance, we couldn't get up the hill without putting chains on the ambulance to go up it. It was just that slick. And so there were some locals there who had come down. They took 2 ambulance personnel up, and we got him and brought him down and put him into the ambulance. We were able to save his hand because we immediately got him to the hospital. They were able to do the rapid warming and stuff. We went in and saw him the next day because they had stabilized him there at Clark Fork Valley Hospital. But then they air flighted him to Seattle, where the Burn and Frostbite Center is for that region of the country. We went in to pick him up because we, as a local ambulance, always had to go to the plane, get the crew, the flight crew and their equipment, bring them over to the hospital, get the patient on, and then take them back to the airplane. Then they could fly because they don't have that ability in the airplane. So when we went to the hospital to get this guy, of course, the hand that had not had the glove on, and this was not very long, it was under 30 minutes from the time he got out of his car to walk down to Highway 200 when this hand was frozen. When we got there, it looked like he had a boxing glove on. They had that much absorbent material and gauze and stuff on that hand. They said they were changing it out every hour, and it was soaked every hour. So they were giving him IV fluids because he was losing that much fluid. And then they flew him to Seattle. They were able to save the hand, and he did make it through that ordeal. But frostbite, especially in cold temperatures, and it doesn't have to be minus 60 to do this. It got to 0 here and a little bit lower last winter. This happened in that type of weather. And so, especially, again, this guy was not used to this kind of weather or cold. So he was doing things that wasn't real smart. He should not have even been out trying to get to town in a two-wheel drive vehicle on a road that was basically sheet of ice. And so people do that. That's why we have EMS. That is why we are here, so that our neighbors, if they're doing something that isn't going to benefit them a lot, we're there that we can help them. We're there so that we know when to call EMS and get them in there, versus they have, very cold hands and they're still red, and just need to get in the warm and get to eating food and stuff. So that's why we do these trainings every month, is so that we can recognize the difference between when can I just take them into a warm place and take care of their needs, versus when do I need to call EMS? Because they'll have more equipment and they'll get them to the hospital quicker because of what they're able to do. Do you have anything else you want to